So, good morning, dear respected Thai, dear sisters and brothers. So, welcome to an unusual event, a presentation of the 14 mindfulness trainings. Those of you who've been on our retreats, we often have a presentation of the 5 mindfulness trainings, which is the path of healthy and happy living. We often have friends who've taken the trainings who come up and share a little bit about each training, each of the 5 trainings, from their own experience. And we decided that this retreat of 21 days is a chance for us to actually look into the 14 mindfulness trainings, which are inspired by our teacher. It's originally from what we call the Bodhisattva Precepts, which is an old tradition, especially popular in East Asia, but originally from India, which is a kind of a disciplined path of a bodhisattva for both lay and monastic practitioners. So it's more than just taking the commitment to generate happiness with each step in our daily living. It's actually how to go out into society, also go in within ourselves with a kind of fearlessness of a bodhisattva, no longer living in fear of our own emotions or the emotions of others. Whether they manifest in a violent form, whether they manifest in authority, threat, whether they manifest in consumption, desire, we no longer fear, or at least we are able to embrace our fear. We understand our fear. And so I think for me that is the essence of the Bodhisattva Precepts. And Thai in the 60s, when he was along with Sister Chan Kong, heading up an organization called the School of Youth and Social Service to bring teachers, medicine, sanitary conditions out to remote villages in Vietnam during the time of the war, and training volunteers to help with that. Thai saw that he needed to instill within these volunteers a kind of discipline, kind of ethic in the way that they did their work. Otherwise it wouldn't have meaning. Just to go and teach, or just to create medical facilities, but without the heart, without the spirit in the right place, then it cannot have much benefit. So Thai took what these Bodhisattva Precepts, which are from a sutra that's quite popular in East Asia, kind of called Brahma Net Sutra, and he updated them to be relevant for the situation of these volunteers, and especially the situation at that time in Vietnam, where competing ideologies, communist, anti-communist, and others, Buddhists, Christian, were literally tearing the fabric of the country apart, literally tearing families apart, putting brother against brother, sister against sister. In that situation of competing ideologies, Thai put right at the beginning of these trainings that we will not be fanatical, we will not take any one dogma or ideology to be absolute truth. Truth is found in life. And that is a very inspiring statement that I know has brought many people here to Plum Village. Just reading that, the first of the 14 mindfulness trainings has inspired many people to walk on this path, because they also come from maybe some trauma, some suffering, whether in the family, whether in a religious family, or in a society where ideology is imposed on us, or even in a school or we felt kind of threatened by authority, or forced to believe things that we did not understand, or we did not see ourselves. So these trainings are a way of committing ourselves as a community, both to a spiritual path, but also not to an ideology or a kind of dogma. So that is something that Thai brought into this School of Youth for Social Service, so that people could continue their path with wholeheartedness, but not with the attachment to dogma or ideology that usually comes with that wholeheartedness, kind of fanaticism. And that has been informing the communities that our teacher has started since then. When he then came to France, and then here starting Plum Village. So at that time, there were 6 members of the Order of Interbeing, what is now called the Order of Interbeing. We call them the 6 cedars, like 6 cedar trees. That included Sister Shankong as one of them, as well as Chi Mai, Nyat Chi Mai. Many of you know the story of Nyat Chi Mai, who later immolated herself because of in a situation of war. So these were very committed practitioners, and people who want to give their whole life to the teaching and practice of awakening, and both as lay people and as monastic. So there's a deeper training, and even our monks, our novice monks, do not receive the OI precepts right away. They need to live for a year or 2 years in the community, participating fully in the life of the community, and also studying the trainings in order to receive them. So it's not just automatic that when you're a monk you will become a member of the Order of Interbeing. So the same is also true for the lay community. We offer the 5 trainings as a way for people to make a personal commitment to transform their own life, and also maybe the life of their family and their colleagues. But receiving the 14 mindfulness trainings, although all of us can practice them right away, takes a bit more time, because it is really something that has to do with the eye of the community, which is a very, we call it Sangha eye. Here in Plum Village, we know that in our daily life, we take refuge not only in our individual insight or wisdom, but we take refuge in the wisdom of the community. And we know that the combined wisdom and deep looking of the community can go much deeper than just one person. We often, in our love for the Buddha, we tend to put him up on a very high pedestal and forget about the community in which he manifested. The community of spiritual practitioners that were going out into the forest and living in India, and going deeply into understanding suffering, understanding the causes of suffering, and the Jain communities, and many other spiritual teachers that the Buddha visited on his own spiritual path, learning and practicing and mastering the practices of each one as he went along. And so Thai always, with these trainings, he reminds us to take refuge in the inside of the community. That the Buddha, just like the Buddha who used the skillful means that were already present in his day, and tried to, in his own practice, manifest the best and the highest of all of those insights that he received from the community. In that same way, as members of the Order of Interbeing, we practice to put down our individual idea sometimes in order to take refuge in the collective wisdom of the community. And that is a very deep practice that we practice, well, really every day in the monastery, And I know there are many sanghas around the world that also are going deeply in that direction, of taking refuge in the community wisdom. So that is a little bit about the history of the OI and the inspiration behind it. Just to clarify, so those who practice the 14 mindfulness trainings, we often refer to as members of the order of interbeing. And if we are invited by our Sangha and by others, and we have the aspiration to become what we call a core member of the order of interbeing, then there's a process with that. That takes a number of years, and you practice with a mentor, often a lay Dhamma teacher, but it could be another core member of the order of interbeing. And in different countries, it's a little bit different, because we want to respect as well the deep insight of each country. Each country and culture has maybe its own insight. So there's no. Thai would often say, Plum Village is not the Vatican. Thai is not the Pope. We function in a distributed way, really practicing in a real way to take refuge in the local sanghas in each country and their wisdom. Sometimes maybe in the US, like each state might have its own particular way of doing mentorship for the order of interbeing. But the important thing is that it is a product of the community's insight, looking deeply into that person and helping them to grow on their spiritual path. Yeah. And that is, but as I've often heard Sister Shan Kong say, to be an order of the interbeing member, you can do that right now by practicing the 14 mindfulness trainings. It's not like we need to have a formal process to touch the insight of interbeing. But to become a core member, it means the community has gone through this process together with you over many years, so when you become a core member, you don't do it just for yourself as an individual, but you're actually just manifesting. You're kind of a representative of the community, and so it has to be something that comes out of the community, and that is something that is sometimes a little bit difficult for people to understand. So I don't want to go on too much longer than that. There are other places if you would like to know more details about the order of interbeing, and you can look around, and sometimes you see lay friends wearing a brown jacket like this, or maybe monks as well. That means we receive that jacket when we become a core member of the order of interbeing. And that is just a way of reminding ourselves to practice. Just like when I wear the robe of a monk, it reminds me when I put it on every morning to be worthy of this robe. It is not to try. It's not like a uniform that's just now I'm somebody special and before I was not. That is not the purpose of a robe. Or the jacket. It is to remind us of our deep responsibility in the monastic community. If a novice asks to go out of the community, we ask him to leave his robe behind, because he has not received the full training yet in order to be ready to represent the community outside of the monastery. So wearing the robe is a responsibility, and wearing the jacket is also a responsibility. And that doesn't mean that everyone who wears a robe or everyone that wears a jacket is very responsible. Yeah. It is not by default that way, but it is just skillful means to help us to remember our practice. So without further ado, I think that's maybe a little bit to introduce the order of interbeing. I'd like to allow my brothers and sisters up here who are all core members of the order of interbeing for many years, to share a little bit about what inspired them to become a member of the order of interbeing. How is their path? How have they walked on their path? And what is maybe a little bit about one or two of the trainings that they find particularly meaningful for them right now, because there can be different moments when different parts of the training stand out for one or the other of us. So I've invited them all to reflect on the trainings and to pick maybe one or even just part of one that they find very inspiring and share about their own experience with it. And again, this is all just an exercise for us to look deeply together. There will be a number of us here who have been going through this process for many years, who will receive the 14 mindfulness trainings in this retreat, I think next week sometime. So this presentation is a way for all of us in the retreat to understand what that process is. And so when that ceremony happens, you can maybe be like, what's going on here? What are these trainings? Can I sign up for these trainings? You may have many questions, and so hopefully with this panel you can get a little bit of an understanding about what this path that Thai proposed for us involves and what it is inspiring in the people around us. Okay, so I will now pass it over to my brothers and sisters to share. So each share for maybe about 15 minutes, and I will, around 13 minutes, I will just lightly wake up the bell so that they know they have a few more minutes to share. And we can enjoy opening our heart and listening deeply to what they have to share with us. Thank you. So I start by inviting Hélène to share. Hélène de Brie is, she's been a member of the OI since the year 2005, the core member of the OI since 2005. And she became a Dhamma teacher in 2012, received the lamp from Thai. And so just a few things about Hélène. She's French, she's from Bretagne. And she is one of the founding members of the children's program in Plum Village with Sister Din Neem. In New Hamlet, I think, included her own children, and it was also that she was inspired to bring her whole family here, even when her children were quite young, in order to practice as a family. And this, I think, next week her husband will receive the lamp as well, and I know that her daughter has been here many times, all of her children, and her daughter has also continued to help with the children's program, and. She's, for 20 years, she's worked with children as an occupational therapist, with children with physical difficulties. And now her work is with adults with cognitive difficulties. She's been a mentor this past year for our Wake Up Schools program, which is training teachers to become happy teachers, to bring the practices of Plum Village into education. So she's been helping to organize and lead that program here in France. And she's especially interested in actively leading retreats on the transformation of our ancestral, of our ancestors, of the suffering and the happiness of our ancestors. So maybe we'll listen to a sound of the bell, and then I invite Hélène to share first.
Dear Thai, dear community, dear friends, I think to be a OI member, it's to be in front of you, something like that, to share my past in Plum Village. As Faplu said, the first time I came here, it's with my children and my husband, with Jack, and I'm very happy to see a child in the whole meditation, because it was one of my aspirations to come here, because I have heard that Thai give teaching for children. and it was very important for me. In 1998, when I came in New Hamlet for the first time, I was present for a transmission of 14 Mindfulness Training, and I felt them very beautiful, very more than the 5 Mindfulness Training, I think. And I think before the first step was to read this 14 Mindfulness Training, and it's a form of, again, commit in society. And in this time, I was interested with the trainings, but not to be on interbeing or to be members of interbeing. I had the wrong perception about the people who have brown jacket. What's that? I don't want to have a brown jacket. And I have this perception during one time. And after, I think when I went the first time, I want to say so that I was 35, and I work a lot with 3 young children. And I think for Thai it's very important that order of interbeing is a reflect of the society. So I can criticize that there are not enough people who are in working society with young children, but what I can do is to belong to this community. And another thing, it's I was engaged in the coordination inter-sangha in French and Francophone community to make links with the Plum village. At this time, there's no website, and I see at one moment I saw the other person in this group of coordination inter-sangha. They belongs to the community of interbeing, and I am alone, not in this community. And I thought that it's not correct. And also, it's what inspired me. It's really a very important gratitude with Thai and with teachings. So I began with the process in France to be OI members. And what changed in my life at this moment, it helps me to be more engaged in the society. I go in a group of Amnesty International as militant. I changed my bank to go in an ethic bank, and I go more and more for the local sangha. When you belong to the OI community, you are not alone. You are not alone. The other help us. Community helps me. It gives me energy. And at the beginning, when I become an OI member, I wear my brown jacket, and as Paplu said, it helps me remind me I have to practice, and more and more and more and more. For some people it's easy, for me it's not. So I have to be helped. What I can share also, to belong to this community, it's as a family, and as you choose your friends, you don't choose the people in the community of OI members. Difference is when there are difficulties, there are practice. Practice is here, and very deep, and it helps also with problem in family after. And we are like different trees in a garden. And I think it's very important that we are different. And we share the same earth, the same roots, but we are different trees. And to be OI helps us to show and to let the positive seeds to grow up, and to help to not dry the wrong seeds. In the society, you have to have skillful means. 20 years ago, it was not possible to talk about meditation and mindfulness, and so you have to practice and use some words who are okay. For me also, it's about fifth training. What my nourishment, and at one time it was not so solid. So my relationships were different. I go most with the Sangha, and I let some friends because I'm not so solid. And after some time, I've different relation with the same people, same friends I let during one time. And I got a good chance to practice in couple and in family. And I thank Jack. And we practice differently. It's me on the chair, it's not him. But it's like that. We have to practice where we are. It's very important. I work with health establishment, with professional in health care. So I can't. I remember monastics said to me that they can't go in an establishment in France. Lay people can. So we have something to do. And we. Another thing I want to share, it's about service. Service, it's one important thing for the commitment to be OI member. In France, we often participate to the staff or service meditation to help monastics. And when friends say that the brown jackets, it must be written service. Service to be here for monastic and for people who discover the practice. It's a good practice also to be in service for the community. and you also help to build a sangha, and also practice with other OI members near your sangha, and to organize a retreat and to organize monastics went in the sangha. To belong to OI community, I think it helps me also to change my work. It's the 11 training. Before I was engaged as an occupational therapist, and different condition makes me to change and to find another way to share the practice as a coach training with professional. And I can take time also to come to Plum Village. Before I can't come when I want. It was very difficult for me to come in summer retreat, in Francophone retreat. And now, with my new work, I am very free, and I'm going to work less and less. And it makes me to work with to live with more simplicity, not spend more money, and to look what I buy, what I do with my money. It's very important, and if we spend less money, we have more time, can have more time to practice differently. We can practice in the work, but we can practice in life. And also, what I can share about Plum Village, you can also have day mindfulness in daily life. Not only formal day, mindful days. In the process in France, it says that we have to participate to 60 days of mindful days. It's very much for people who work. So you have to find a way to practice in the daily life. And as a mom with 3 young children, with work, I learned to practice in daily life, I think, more than to be on a cushion and to come here. Now I have more time to come here, so it become different. And very important to nourish sisterhood and brotherhood. In France, we have each year we have 1 week of retreat with OI members in Plum Village, usually, not always, but usually, and we live together. And it's important to take time together to know each other, and it helps us to know oneself. I'm very happy to share with you, and I'm available if you want to talk with me after. Thank you.
Thank you, Ellen. Especially reminding us, putting a service on the on the jacket itself. I always am so inspired by Thai's way of starting with suffering. We come to the spiritual path, and in the end, we very quickly we are washing up the washing bins in the monastery, or cleaning the toilets. So this coming from a place of suffering quickly becomes a path of service. So thank you. I don't know who would like to go next. If anyone, maybe I introduce next Beam. So Beam became a member of the Order of Interbeing in 2012. He's been, along with his wife Sally, is a member of the Sangha of Los Gatos for 20 years, which is in Northern California. He rides his bike a long way every day to work as a child psychologist, and also leading mindfulness seminars for businesses. He has been active with many things, but just a few family meditation program with children coming out of a psychiatric ward, working with homeless and drug addiction, with issues of drug addiction, and particularly being a fully immersed member of the Sangha of the Pacific Ocean. He's almost every day surfing off the coast of Santa Cruz. And I told him, yeah, I've seen where he's gone surfing, and it looks a little bit scary. So, so I invite him to share a little bit about his path as an OI member.
Dear Thai, dear family, dear Sangha, dear noble beings, we were asked what brought us to become an OI member, and what's the path, and what is it? And what brought me is a broken heart. There's a song from the 60s by the Isley Brothers. This old heart of mine's been broke 1,000 times. So this old heart of mine been broke 1,000 times, and it gets broken all different ways. And some of the ways that the heart is broken is through our ancestors, through our parents. My father was a captive in a concentration camp for 4 years. My mother was a victim of child abuse and some pretty profound disabilities. And then as a psychologist, my heart has been broken by my patients suiciding or different things. And I think we all have collective broken hearts with our environment, and that's what brought me. That's what brought me here. So I have a request. I would like us all, if you feel comfortable, to put your hand on your heart and to breathe in and to breathe out. And feel that broken heart. Just feel that heart that's so tender. That heart that's felt like you were all alone in this world. That heart that's been broken 1,000 times. And while you're holding your hand on your heart, I'd like you to open your eyes, and I'd like you to look around and see if you can connect with everyone else's. All of us have that broken heart. And I'd like you to take a breath in, and I'd like you to release and just let go. And I'd like you to take your hand back and touch your heart and touch that heart of joy, that heart of possibility. And breathe in to that and breathe out from that. And now look around at the heart of joy that everyone else is touching. And I saw some actual physical touching, which was great. And now, as you breathe out and let go, open your hands and just look around and imagine and send out the wish. May you be happy. May you be well. May you be whole. Thank you. So that's what brought me. The broken heart, and then the possibility of nourishing this heart of joy, of wholeness, of love. And I remember a few years ago, Tai Fop Young said in this group, he was sitting up here and he said, there's just two noble truths. We really know how to suffer, and we really know how to be happy in this path. So, for me, touching that heart of my own sadness, and not trying to jump over it into whatever that spiritual life is, but to be real with it, and to know that that's the ground of my practice, that that's the basis of my compassion and my humanity. That's the basis. My wife and I, Sally and I, we lived for 12 years with our Hindu guru, and we were part of different traditions. And I'd met Thai a few times before, but I went to a retreat in 2000 in San Diego. And I was walking, early morning, probably walking, quickly, like, oh, God, I want to get there, get a good seat. But there was a monk next to me. Well, guess who it was? Of course, he was walking slower. But there's something about those footsteps that is also this path, the OI path. It's really following in the footsteps of Thai. Brother Phap Lu talked about that, the birth of that path. When Brother Phap Lai was giving a talk yesterday, he was talking about Thai, our beloved Thais, and that, of course, brings up some feelings and sadness, I think, for all of us, but it's stupa. And he said, I'm not here. But then he says, well, you can remember me through your walking, through your steps. So this path, for me, is to nourish the conditions to really walk on that path. One version of the Bodhisattva vow is, just as all the Buddhas of the past have embraced that awakened attitude of mind, and in the precepts of the Bodhisattvas, step by step, abode and trained. Just so, for the benefit of all beings, I will also walk that path, and step by step, I will abide and train myself. And so a signature that all of us notice coming to Plum Village is the walking, the beautiful walking of the monks. Tai was, so I came here a little early, and then I went back to my room kind of fast because I've got new hearing aids, but I can also listen to podcasts from Tai on my Bluetoothed into my hearing aids, so, it's pretty cool. But he said, the question was, if there's only one thing we can do to help us in our practice, what is it? Tai says, people are lazy. They only want one thing. Then he said, well, you're going from one place to another. Just do it mindfully. Just do it mindfully. Walking and that continuation. So the other aspect of the OI was deepening Sangha. Deepening Sangha, our Sangha connection. And so sometimes, because I teach meditation in some different places, and sometimes people say, well, why do you do this and why? And the real answer is, that I tell some people is, well, I know how crazy I can be, and that's why I practice. The writer from Northern California, Annie Lamont, says, my mind is a dangerous place. I never want to go there alone. For me, Sangha lets me go to my own mind and into that dangerous place. In my one meditation class, a woman came in that hadn't been to the class before, and she came late, and she looked around, and in this class there's some people with some psychosis and some recent addiction, and she looked around and said, oh, all these people, they know what's going on here, but I'm right now feeling a little crazy. I said, oh, that's perfect. This group, and I put my arms out, can hold craziness. The group is big enough. And that's what, for me, taking this step into OI has been. And it wasn't easy. So I came here and I'd been, a Hindu, I've been, we'll try this, I've been that, and it's just, I was touched by the tenderness here, the gentleness. And there's a certain sense, and I actually got put in the wake-up group. I'm 69 years old. Don't tell the rest of the... And one thing I noticed, and I think it's good for me, and maybe I can be helpful, but I noticed that on the path, especially when I was younger, there's a certain heroic ideal of, practice and doing. And what I've learned is that the most immense power in the universe is love and tenderness and kindness that's in the footsteps, that's in the way each of us greet each other, and that's what's nourished. And that is what really connected me here to this place. I didn't feel like I needed another guru or another thing. So it was 11 years after I took the 5 mindfulness trainings that I took the OI. 14. And I thought, I don't want to be part of, there was some resistance of letting go of myself and so forth. I just remembered when I was a teenager, I was in a gang, and we wore brown jackets. We were called the Royals, and we used to, get in fights with other schools, like kind of get in fights with other like sanghas, and So I actually think there was some subconscious thing. But if you think about transforming mud to lotus, now, the Royals is now the OI. It's like, oh my gosh, me? And so I guess I'll say, whatever, we all feel like we have a special kind of craziness or hurt or wound that won't heal or whatever. I think, being a psychologist, I've really seen that. All of us have that. And to let that gently, to let that be held with your practice with the Sangha, by Thai, very gently, and be yourself. Just be yourself. I want to thank my wife, Sally. Another thing about the OI is when I get a little, like, little, Sally looks at me and says, Beam? I go, what? She goes, remember, you're OI. I go, oh, thank you. Thank you. So that's another way that we can be supported. Love yourself, keep hugging yourself, and thank you for being here.
Thank you, Biem. I was just listening to you share, and I look out at my brothers, and I think, I think you have to be a little bit crazy to become a monk. So, so maybe more of us can cultivate that little bit of craziness. Valerie, would you be okay to go? I'd like to introduce Valerie Brown. Valerie is a OI member since 2003, and in a few days she's invited to receive the lamp of a Dhamma teacher here in Plum Village. She's of Afro and Cuban descent, and worked as a lobbyist and a lawyer for many years, but has recently gone into training leaders in education in schools. She's come out with a book recently called Mindfulness for School Leaders. And she's very interested in engaging in issues of peace and social justice with people of color and marginalized groups and people in transition. And she lives on the East Coast of the United States. So without further ado.
Good morning, dear Thai. Dear beloved community, so I'd like to share about 2 of the 14 mindfulness trainings. It's the first will be the 8th training, which is on true community and communication, and then the 9th training on truth, on truthful and loving speech. So I'm just going to read a little bit from both of these trainings. Aware that lack of communication always brings separation and suffering, we are committed to training ourselves in the practice of compassionate listening and loving speech. And it goes on from there, many, many things. And then the 9th training, aware that words can create happiness or suffering, we are committed to learning to speak truthfully, lovingly, and constructively. And that training goes on from there. So I'm going to share very narrowly focused, because there's much that could be said about both of these trainings. And I guess I would preface anything that I would say by just acknowledging that everything that I'm about to share really came from Thai and from this community and from what I have studied and practiced. And this is a work in progress. This is not done, it's not complete. I'm very much a beginner, and so I want to just begin by acknowledging that this is my own personal experience, and every person in this room might have a very different experience. So, a little bit of background. So I became a lawyer and a lobbyist sort of before I knew who I was. And that's sort of how I do most things. I became a member of the Order of Interbeing before I knew what was involved in it. And I've just sort of kind of backed my way out and tried to figure it out ever since. So I grew up in the People's Republic of Brooklyn. And Brooklyn at that time was not the swanky place it is today. There were no yoga studios and no latte shops. It was very much the kind of place that you wanted to kind of get away from, get going really fast. And so I grew up amid a lot of violence, quite a dangerous place, a lot of poverty, and this generated in me a lot of fear. And so being quite fearful, I did a lot of running. And I ran from Brooklyn to undergraduate school, and from undergraduate school to graduate school, and graduate school to law school, and law school to the big and important job as a lobbyist and a lawyer, representing many different groups. So the work of a lobbyist is someone who goes between warring parties, who tries to facilitate discussion between political parties that often do not speak to each other or do not agree. The job of a lobbyist is to try to influence, to persuade. And so after years of law school and working in this field, and being on the run, and having a lot of fear, and growing up with a lot of violence, I had a lot of aggression. And so in the work that I would do, it was mainly about trying to convince, trying to persuade, and in a quite hostile and a quite aggressive way, other people to the rightness of my point of view. But a turning point came in many ways. So the first turning point was many years ago. I got divorced, and one of the reasons that my husband at the time gave for wanting to get divorced, he said, "You know, Valerie, you don't listen to me." And you know, the guy was right. The big shot lawyer, I had the question, you know, the answer to his question even before he asked the question. That was the mindset. But, you know, something else happened along the way, and this was in 1995. I happened to attend a public talk given by our teacher and at the Riverside Church. That was like a watershed moment for me. It was quite revolutionary. Everything that our teacher said about how to live in the world, how to handle one's strong emotions, was contrary to the way I was living. And I kind of left the talk and I thought, well, what's the matter with that guy? You know, and went about my business. But a tiny kernel was planted within me, like a seed was planted in me, that there was something I knew that was true about what Thai had said in that talk. And so I joined a local sangha and started practicing in a very small community. And then again, before I knew anything about OI, I joined the Order of Interbeing and started practicing. And mainly, I started practicing metta, or loving kindness. And I began really primarily directing metta to myself. And not in a narcissistic way, but I believe that if I could have compassion for myself, maybe if I could feel peace within myself, maybe, just maybe I could translate that peace and compassion with other people. So I thought it was quite challenging, but I practiced. Every day I would wake up, may I be peaceful. I would go to sleep at night, may I be happy. It became like a mantra for me every day. The other thing I did was I practiced mindful breathing. I would focus very intently on my breath. And I decided to practice mindful breathing at work, because I spent a lot of time at work. So what I would do at work, now I'm a lobbyist, I'm in a business suit, I'm standing in the halls of Congress or in the state capitol. My job is to influence politicians, people who may be very adverse to me physically or have viewpoints that I do not agree with personally, very conservative Republican or very, very liberal Democrat. I would practice mindful breathing. So the first thing I would do I would turn to my breathing, and I would then notice from my breath, you know, the quality of how I was breathing. Was my breath deep? Was it short? What was happening? And then I realized that my breathing was also connected to how I was feeling. So maybe there would be like a flash of anger or upset or edginess. And I would feel that flash in my heart or on my face. And I would name whatever that emotion that was arising. This is edginess, this is anger, this is resentment. I would name that silently to myself. And then I would shift all of that from how I was feeling to the focus on the person I was speaking to. I would begin to get curious, deeply curious about the other person. How was this other person feeling? What was going on for this other individual? And with that kind of openness and curiosity, I would then ask the person an open question, like, how do you feel? What do you think? Why does this piece of legislation matter to you? What is most important to you? So shifting from myself to the other person. Now, all of this is happening while I'm standing in the halls of Congress, and it takes maybe 30 seconds, something like that. But I practice this all day long, every day, with every conversation I had. And what I noticed happened was, rather than being combative, rather than trying to convince the person of the rightness of my position, we kind of formed a bridge between each other, and there was a kind of understanding. The person felt connected. They felt the kind of peace that was in me, the kind of palpable sense that something was shifting and changing. So, a couple of observations, more than a couple of observations about the practice of listening in a very deep way to another person. And again, this is all from our beloved teachers' teachings to us, and experimenting with all of this. So a lot of this was about listening to what was expressed, but more than what was expressed, what was unexpressed. Much more is communicated from what is not expressed in words. I realized the power of presence, of actually being there. You know, we live in a virtual world with continuous partial attention. And so to really be there for another person is quite a revolutionary thing. You often don't have to say one thing. In fact, to listen to another person in this very deep way is an act of love. Most people cannot tell the difference between listening in this way and love. They feel very, very similar. And our teacher has often quoted the theologian Paul Tillich. And Tillich said that the first duty of love is to listen. The first duty of love is to listen. And so when we listen in this very way, we not only influence another person, but we love the other person. And things change. So I'll just conclude with a little bit about speaking mindfully. Two things. One is to speak our truth in a way that respects other people's truth, to lay our truth side by side with someone else's truth. This is the way. And a little litmus test for you. It's what I have practiced. Before I speak, especially when there's a charged atmosphere, I ask myself several questions. First, is it truthful? Is it useful? Is it compassionate? Is it timely? Truthful, useful, compassionate, timely. If it doesn't meet that test, maybe I don't need to speak. And so, Elaine mentioned that we are like a garden here, like flowers in a garden. We're surrounded by a beautiful garden here. We cannot open a flower with a sledgehammer. It takes love. So listening, speaking in this way is an act of love. Thank you. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Valerie, for reminding us about the power of mindful speech. This is something that many of us learn here in Plum Village. Maybe we've been in other Buddhist traditions, we practice meditation, and when we come to Plum Village, we learn that it's not only about our practice of concentration as an individual, but also our capacity to listen and speak in a way that is loving and kind. So thank you for sharing your practice. So I'd like to invite next Brother Dan to share. Dan is our youngest member up here. He's a member of Wake Up in, a little bit everywhere in the world, international, which is a movement for young people that are inspired by Thay's teaching. It's, I think, fully it's young Buddhists and non-Buddhists for a healthy and compassionate society. And so he practiced with Thay in the community originally in Bat Nha, which was a monastery which opened in Vietnam from 2006 until 2009. A piece of land in the central highlands of Vietnam became a practice center for a few years. And so many young people came from all over Vietnam to the days of mindfulness there, to retreats. And so Tan came from Ho Chi Minh City and started practicing with the young monks and nuns in Bat Nha. And then when that monastery closed, then he practiced with the Sung Fung group in a local sangha. And he, as part of his work, he went to Norway, and he there started a small sangha outside of Oslo, and eventually moved to the city of Oslo to help with the sangha there. And since then has been living in Paris. He's helped to begin the Paris Wake Up Hub, which is an idea inspired by our teacher and some of our elder brothers and sisters to have young people living together, offering a space of practice right in the midst of the city. So Dan has been active with the Paris Wake Up Hub and also helping with the new monastic center near Paris, which is starting, which you'll hear about a little bit later in the retreat. And his work is in consulting. He worked in Vietnam in consulting and leadership, as well as with computer programming. And he continues with that work in his life abroad. So I'd like to allow Dan to share.
Dear Thầy, dear Sangha, first of all, I would like to thank you, the presentations of Sister Ellen, Brother Bim, and Sister Valerie. Before I begin my sharing, I would like to start with a small exercise, and I hope that everybody can join me in this exercise. The exercise to express the gratitude. I would like to invite everybody to come back to our breath and be aware of our body, relaxing our body. Our first gratitude is for our spiritual ancestors. If you want, you can put your right hand in your heart to really feel the gratitude without their teachings, we cannot benefit from the teaching today. A second gratitude is for Thai and the Sangha all around the world for their teachings and their engage in bringing the practice into the world. And the third gratitude is for our elder OI members, both the monastic and the lay OI members. We are aware that you have done a lot so that today we have a very clear way to follow. Especially in the war time, there was a lot of sacrifice and great work so that today we have a path to follow. And my last wish is may my words is truthful, compassionate, useful, and timely. May we listen and speak at one body, and we see the connections between all of us. Thank you. About my OI journey, I think it's very easy and smooth. I read the book of Thai in 2008. And immediately I fell in love with him and his teaching. And then I come to the Sangha and practice with the Sangha. And I follow everything the Sangha taught me. They taught me you should receive the 5 mindfulness training, and I did. And after a few years, they say, oh, you should be more engaged in building and helping the Sangha, and I did. And after a few years, they say, oh, you should receive 14 mindfulness training, and I did. So it's so smooth and easy. You know it's a joke, right? Actually, I was very stubborn. So my OI journey is not like this. It's like this. My first period of the journey is the period since I know Thai until I take the 5 mindfulness training. As many of you, I went to Thai because I was looking for a solution for my sufferings. I really suffer a lot at the time I read the book of Thai. My girlfriend left me. I'm from the share manager. I become a normal employee because of the bad performance. I always have problem with my blood families. So many problems. But I was so stubborn that I believe there should be many other ways, not just the Buddhist way. Because I was born in the Christianity family background. My mother was Christians, and my father is some kind of atheist. So I was so difficult to accept the Buddhist teaching. If I can, I always try other solutions to solve my suffering other than the Buddhist one. So I was working in the leadership consulting, and I know some of the psychological techniques like hypnosis, NLP, or those stuff. I was stubborn. I was so stubborn. I tried to find all of other solutions, except the Buddhist one. But I was so desperate that it didn't help me. So then I say, let's give it a try. So I read the book of Thai, and then I begin to practice every day very diligently. In the first 6 months, very diligent. From the morning to the evening, mindful all day, very, very diligent. And then I figured out the Bhagnya monastery, and I joined and I practiced very diligently. And it did help me to overcome the suffering at that time. It did help. But then my stubbornness is raised again, especially because of the Bhagnya monastery is no longer there. So I did not have more support from the Sangha, and the stubbornness continues to question me all about the Buddhist teachings. So I begin to follow some other teachings, like leadership, psychology, all that stuff. So it's like and then this. And then I went to Norway. There was a time in Norway I suffered too much. So then I questioned me again, how can I, a master student, know a lot of psychology techniques, I try a lot of things, still suffer too much. Maybe I need to re-question me again about the path of Thai. So why don't you come back? Do you remember the time you suffer and you found the relief in the teaching? Do you remember that? Don't be too stubborn. Don't be too ignorant of the Buddhist teachings. So I contact a nun here. She was my friend, and luckily she invited me here. And that was the second time I feel such a huge healing in my life. Such a healing. It's so healing. In the intellect, maybe I can create and debate a lot about Buddhist, non-Buddhist, science, not science. But on the suffering level, I cannot deny the suffering. And I cannot deny the healing from the teachings. So I was walking with Thai. It was so joyful and so healing. And then I think this is the right way done. This is the right path for you. Don't be so stubborn. But still, I did not take the 5 mindfulness training because I didn't want to be a Buddhist. But because of the healing is so huge, I just want to commit with the practice. But still, I still stuck with the idea about being a Buddhist or not Buddhist. But deep in my soul, I want to commit it to the practice. I don't care about being Buddhist or not. So I just continue to practice because it's, for me, it's so healing and so transforming. And then at the local Sangha, the Dharma teacher says, do you want to take the 5 mindfulness training? I say, do I have to become a Buddhist? And she say, no, but you still can take the 5 mindfulness training. It was such a relief for me. Okay, now I can officially follow Thai without being labeled as a Buddhist. So I took the 5 mindfulness training. It took me 5 years. So it's not easy. 5 years to really commit to the path of Thai, to commit to the 5 mindfulness training. Do we have to stop at 11:15 or 30 minutes? Okay. And the second journey from the 5 mindfulness training to the 14. Actually, I was not aware of there's something called OI. I was not aware at all. But what I just know that this practice is my path. I want just to continue it. So that's the main aspirations. I didn't care about jacket or whatever. But then the question is, if you're so committed to the practice, why don't you become a monastic? That are very difficult questions. So I still have not found the absolute answer yet. So the reason I keep committing to the practice and still live in the lay life up to now, because of several conditions around my life. The first condition is that I was inspired by a story of a mother. When I was watching her, carrying the baby, and she could not participate in the Dharma talk. And she said to me, a life is so difficult. You see, I have to take care of my children. I cannot go to the Dharma talk. I cannot practice. So I was so touched by that story. See, how can a lay person did not believe that she can practice? Why is just going to the Dharma talk is a practice? She can play with her children and still practice. So that's the first condition that inspired me. That is it possible to practice as a monastic, as a lay life? So that's my first condition. The second one is my sister and her children. I was living with my sister and her children at that time, and she questioned me all the time. Dan, don't become a monastic, don't become a monastic. And she say, you see, if you can help me and my children and still practice, it's better. And then I was persuaded of that kind of argument. And the third condition is because I love my job so much. I love my job so much that even I feel such a healing here in the practice, I could not leave my job to come here. So that's why I chose the lay life as practitioners. And then I asked, is it possible to practice as a lay life, and who else is better to ask that question than Thầy? Then I, in the oracle, in the New Year's, I asked Thầy, dear Thầy, is it possible to practice at a monastic as a lay friends, the lay practitioners? And he says, it's difficult, but yes. So it's difficult, yes. So anyway, he said yes. I didn't. I was not really, stubborn style. I was not care about difficult or not. She said yes. Okay, yes. And then I say, oh, okay. Now I can fully commit to the practice as a lay practitioner. Okay, just the last words. So that's the path from 5, 0 to 5, 5 to 14. No, the rest is just the procedure, The rest is just procedures. Because deep inside myself, I found a commitment to the practice. I found a commitment to practice at the lay practitioners. And the rest is just procedures, friends. So, you participate in Sangha, helping the Sangha, reading and understanding the 14, accept the 14, all the stuff. Thank you.
So thank you, Tan, for reminding us as well that it's not just about the outer form, whether we are a monk or a lay practitioner, we can deeply enter this path of the ideal of a bodhisattva. So I invite you all, I know many of you are at the recitation last week or a few days ago for the 14 mindfulness trainings, but if you are interested to read them again or have them with you during this retreat as a reminder of your aspiration, we've made a few copies that are on the table by the headphones. So on the way out, if you're in a family or a group, you can take just one copy. So we didn't make enough for everyone here. I think there's only about 60 copies, but if you maybe each couple or group can take a copy, and if you'd like to read the trainings, and maybe one each day for the rest of the retreat, you can let it kind of infuse your practice while you're here. Allow it to be the object of your concentration. So thank you all for your testimony, for your sharing. I'm really grateful to be bathing in the sea of Dhamma up here. And thank you all for listening. So we'll have a walking meditation next in about 10 minutes. We can come back to our breath, come back to our body, and just enjoy this present moment. This is a happy moment.